let's talk about CAMHS. Are CAMHS a help or a hindrance? As I've said before, all of this is based on my own personal experience as a mum to a 10-year-old daughter with autism who is currently residing in a Tier 4 CAMHS unit. And I can only go off the experience that I've had, and obviously it won't be everybody's experience. I do acknowledge that such services are stretched, and as such, there are massive caseloads for individual workers in there, and they can't always perform to the level that parents expect. I do get that. My experience was negative for several reasons. I did originally ask that we engage with CAMHS after my daughter became unwell and I'd spoken to school about her. I needed some help, I needed to know where to go next, and from what my GP said, CAMHS would be the next rung on that ladder. And so school got in touch with CAMHS on my behalf and I was allocated a link worker. And she was lovely, she was fantastic. She rang me up in December 2024 and she started to ask me all the right questions about my daughter. When did this start? You know, what are her signs and symptoms? Why do you think she has an eating disorder? Why don't you think this is just picky eating? And she asked all the right things. She was completely empathetic. She was lovely. You know, I felt like I had a good relationship with her from the off. So that was great. You know, that was everything that I wanted from CAMHS. They did say they'd be back in touch in January when this link worker will come in and start to do some work with my daughter in January in school. I was concerned because I didn't think that she could last over Christmas without having some kind of intervention, but I was given lots of useful contact numbers and email addresses of people that I could get in touch with, such as crisis teams, should I need to. So, fast forward to January 2025. Things were no better. Things had gotten worse over the holidays, obviously, with that lack of routine and structure. Which we all crave a little bit, but especially if you're a child with autism. And when she went back to school, she was quite dysregulated. She wasn't getting on with a teacher this year, which really bothered her because she likes to be liked and she bothers what people think about her. That's a really big thing with her. So she was struggling anyway. She was having some friendship issues and it was all just creating what they call the perfect storm for all of this to happen in. Obviously that on top of myself and her dad separating and now living in two separate houses as well. I do acknowledge that that will have had some impact on her. So one Sunday she was at my house and we had an incident in which she tried to throw some red hot soup that had just been cooked in the microwave, which I grabbed her arm and I pushed her back from the microwave to protect her. And she mentioned this when she had her meeting with the link worker on the Monday. And it was sent through as a report to social services as a safeguarding concern, I suppose rightly so, out of context. And I was asked to go into school to explain myself. Now, I had some preconceived ideas about what kind of families had social services involvement. I admit that. I had my prejudices. Yeah. I had prejudice. And when you don't know any better, you don't do any better. And I was mortified. I did not think that we were that type of family to need social services involvement. And to this day, besides the obvious, her not eating, having social services involvement has been the most traumatic for me. Call it ego, but it goes against nature. To me, I feel that I should be able to look after my children and I shouldn't need to have somebody else looking at my capability to do so. So that case was closed. I obviously went in. There were a lot of tears from myself, from the pastoral worker at school who'd had to support the reporting of it. Obviously it's procedure, but she knew what hard time we were having. And it was dreadful. It was really dreadful. My daughter obviously felt upset that she'd accidentally caused this whole event to take place. And yeah, that was understandable. Like I say, the report had to be made and I had to explain myself. Fab. However, between January and March then, CAMHS made several more referrals to social services. Now, these were for ridiculous reasons. And I think any of you watching that are in this particular situation that have a child that's not eating will completely get where I'm coming from with my actions. And maybe even anybody watching without children that are going through this would be like, I'm sure there's a better way to handle that. There were many, I think there were about 7 in total, but a couple of them were, when my daughter wasn't eating, and she had dropped about 6 kilograms in total, so she was looking very, very slight, and I was really fraught and upset. And I said to her, if you don't eat, you will die. I used those words. I did. I was afraid. And obviously during one of her meetings with the lady from CAMHS, she'd mentioned this, and I was reported for emotional abuse, because saying that to your child that's starving is emotional abuse. Now, like I said to the CAMHS worker, and I've said subsequently to anybody else that I've had to speak to about this, including the lady from social services, if you have a child, I defy any of you to have your child who's starving stand in front of you and not to say these things to them. You're going to die if you don't eat. So yeah, that was one of the reasons. And another, I took her off school dinners because she wasn't eating anything at all. And I sent her with a packed lunch with 3 or 4 of her safe foods. Again, that's not a term I've ever used. I've never called food safe. Bad, good, indifferent, anything like that. That was just a phrase that she'd started to use. But I sent her in with 3 or 4 things because I knew that she'd at least eat something throughout the day. And I was reported for having taken her off dinners because they thought I was restricting her food. So back to my experience. Obviously, this is not everybody's experience, and I'm sure that there were procedures that were being followed. However, this then leads me on to how I think my experience with CAMHS has subsequently, again, I've used that word twice, I think, impacted my daughter's care, because I do feel that had that 4, 5, 6 weeks of this CAMHS involvement where they were going into school talking to her, even though we were beyond the talking stage, I think had they have engaged with the Children's Eating Disorder Service sooner and listened to what I'm saying, I know my child, this isn't right, this isn't just about picky eating, this isn't a phase, she's not just depressed, there is something more at play. I think that we would be, like I say, 5, 6 weeks further along in a recovery. I really do believe that. That is my opinion. So I do know that other people have had a good experience with CAMHS, and that's great. And I do think that they're fantastic for early intervention. I just think that my daughter deteriorated pretty quickly, and went from healthy to not healthy rather quickly. And I just think that quicker action was needed. And I did feel like there was an element of parent blaming, and what felt like to me, this was just my feelings, I was never actually accused of this, but this is very much how I felt, like they were trying to prove that it was a case of Munchausen's by proxy, like I was trying to get her hospitalised for attention or something. I mean, no, obviously I'm sure they're eating the words because she is hospitalised, and it was needed a long time ago, but I just felt like the focus was in the wrong place, and that has therefore had a detrimental effect on the speed and efficiency of my daughter's care and recovery. So I'm very, very keen to know all about your experience with CAMHS. Did you have a better experience? Were they your guardian angels in your situation? Did they get you everything that you needed? Eventually, they did get me in touch with the KEDS team, the Children's Eating Disorder Service, which I'm eternally grateful for, that we got her on the right path eventually. But there was just something to me that was fundamentally wrong with the process. I'm really keen to hear your views, so please feel free to drop me a comment and to let me know, what you think could have been done differently with yourselves if you're in a similar situation. So I will be talking on my next video about eventual hospital admission, and then what happens when your child gets transferred to a tier 4. Thank you.